We've seen Toyota do this in the past, whether it was from the Qualis to the Innova, or more recently from the Innova to the Innova Krista. They just moved the game forward, and the promise is pretty much the same when it comes to the all-new Fortuner. But actually, they're promising a bit more than I had expected. They're saying this has been benchmarked in many ways against the Prado. Well, we're getting to drive it for a bit today and get a sense of where the Fortuner stands. One thing is for sure, the Fortuner stands out. Toyota wanted it to look cool, and thanks to the slim all-LED headlamps, the complex shape of the bumper and the fog lamp design. On the side, the flowing window line and the fanned-out LED tail lamps give the Fortuner a futuristic and dramatic look. But this might not be to everyone's taste. In terms of size, the new Fortuner is wider and longer than the outgoing SUV, but it has a lower overall height, while packing the same wheelbase as before. The overall ground clearance as measured by ARAI is said to be 184 mm, which is lower than before. However, you will find it hard to complain about the cabin. Now, a pain point for a lot of Fortuner owners in the past was that after spending so much more than an Innova, you still had interiors that looked the same. Now with the all-new Fortuner, yes, even with the Innova, the interiors have become so much richer. But here, they're not only richer, but they also look different. You can see the layout for the air vents. Of course, the infotainment system sits right here in the middle. It's familiar that way. But some small details which feel really nice in that sense. For instance, all your contact points, if you look at the glove box here, it's got this nice push system here, and this is all nice and soft. Another nice touch is this. This is just so velvety, the sunblind. It feels very nice, and of course leather on the door pads helps make that experience feel richer. The driver is also treated to a powered 8-way adjustable seat. There's also a sharp and information-packed LCD display in the driver's instrument cluster. The LED cabin lights look really cool as well. But some things that still feel a little, not all that satisfying. For instance, the graphics for the infotainment system, not that rich in terms of the colors or the pixel density. And then when you look at the air conditioning system, it feels a bit old school. Some of the plastics, like on the top of the dashboard, are simple and tough. And the glossy black bits look a bit tacky as well. In terms of safety, the Fortuner will offer 7 airbags, ABS, EBD and stability control with brake assist as well. The sensible quotient is quite high in the back as well. Lots of storage spaces here in the back as well. You'll see these nice bag hooks here at the back, a small storage bin here for your phone. You could keep that here, and a charging point. You also have space to keep a 1-liter bottle in the door pocket, but it is hard to reach it when the door is shut. That aside, the space for the passengers themselves is nice. You can see that there's plenty of knee room here. The seat backs are scooped out to liberate more space. But this is with the middle bench set to its forwardmost point. If I push it back, plenty of knee room here, And along with that, you'll see that there's a new air conditioning system up here. It's just on buttons now. The third row will be usable for shorter passengers like me. The scooped out roof lining helps. But it still feels claustrophobic as it dips down in front of the passengers. Now, whether you're tall or short, you won't complain about the boot. Now, there's a nifty feature here on the Fortuner. Press here. Yes, as you all know, it's got a powered tailgate, but that isn't it. For shorter people, when it opens all the way up, it might be a bit high. So what you can do is you can program the height that you want it to open at. So press the button once, let the door come down to the level that you're comfortable with, let's say here, and then you hold down on the button for a couple of seconds. You get that beep, you're done. Now when you shut it, that's that, right? But next time you open it, it'll only open that much. Pretty cool, huh? And of course, once the boot's open, you'll see that you have a good amount of room here for luggage. You can sit a small suitcase down flat, and you can see there's still plenty of room left over. But if you do have need for lots of luggage, you can get the third row up. Now these aren't powered, but there is an upside here. See, they flip up, they have assist here, and the other thing is this is now much easier to put on as compared to the earlier Fortuner. So you don't really need to use too much force to lift them up. Pretty nice. Now we get to the business side of things, and the first thing is a bit tricky to absorb. When most manufacturers launch a new model these days, you'll find there's a lot of noise about weight having been cut down, or the weight actually remaining the same despite the new car being bigger, being more loaded and all that. But this Fortuner is actually not lighter. It's not even the same weight. It's about 250 kilos heavier than the outgoing car. That's because Toyota wanted to make the Fortuner more refined and nicer to drive. That meant overhauling everything, from the chassis, the suspension, the body, and of course, the engines. Now, as we drive through God's own country, the route that we're on actually is fairly inhabited, and I'm not complaining because the Fortuner that we're driving is the petrol version with the automatic transmission. The 4-cylinder 2.7-litre petrol engine was making quite an impression with its refinement. At idle, you can't even make out that it's turning over, and when you get going, typical low city speeds, it's quiet, it's gentle, and that just feels so nice. That kind of refinement is for petrols only. The engine is in the same state of tune as in the Innova, and it makes 166 PS of power. And like on the Innova, here too it is offered only as a two-wheel drive version. For the city commute driven calmly, this will be quite enjoyable. Now, left in D mode, the 6-speed gearbox does pretty much what you want it to do. It's only when you're really running it fast that you'd want more control, and for that you have either the sport mode or you could use the paddle shifters to get more control of the ratio that you use. Now, if you want to drive fast, you can. There is enough punch on offer, but to do that, you're going to have to use the higher end of the rev range of this motor. And when you do that, you'll find that it is more audible inside the cabin, but it still remains pretty smooth. That's the sound. We also drove the diesel. This is the 2.8-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged unit. Okay, they weren't kidding about it, right? This cabin feels really nice and silent. This is the diesel variant, right? And compared to the previous Fortuner, this feels much quieter, much better insulated, and that makes long distance travel always so much nicer. That isn't the only reason it is nicer. This engine, when coupled with the automatic transmission, gets 450 Newton meters of torque. But the manual version we were driving gets 420 Newton meters, which is still a lot more than what's offered in the Innova. This engine is torquey. It'll pull off just above 1000 RPM. Even going up a slope, it'll just do it calmly. And when it gets into the mid-range past 2000 RPM, it pulls so nice and strong. And on top of that, it's not that the torque is just stacked in a very narrow band, it's actually much wider. So this engine just feels so much more usable and actually so much nicer to drive. Now, the diesel variant of the Fortuner does come with an all-wheel drive system, but this time around, it isn't a permanent all-wheel drive system. Gone is that clunky stock to engage different drive modes. You just have a rotary switch here. In two-wheel high, that's where you'd keep it for most on tarmac activities. When you need more grip, you can shift to four-wheel high. And for the really rough stuff, come to a standstill and engage four-wheel low. We indulged in some rough roading, and the Fortuner felt tough and the suspension soaked up nasty shocks better than expected. On the road, you could also feel the difference in the way this SUV rode.
Now, in terms of ride quality, you'll find that the suspension has been stiffened a bit, but that's a good thing. So at low speeds you may feel a little bit more of the surface, but overall body control is just so nice. Even when it's going over bumps, it's not jigging about, it's just rolls over it nice, smooth and controlled. Now, steering the Fortuner at lower speeds is a bit of a pleasant surprise. Yes, the suspension helps, but so does the steering. It's still a hydraulic unit, but the thing is, this just feels nicely weighted and quite direct.
Sure, if you drive hard, you'll find that it does roll a bit, as can be expected of a tall, old-school SUV. On the practical front, Toyota claim that the Fortuner will be more fuel efficient than the outgoing car despite being heavier. While we will have to wait to test that claim, we can see that the all-new Fortuner will be even more appealing now. The Fortuner will be available in 6 versions. A single petrol engine available only as a 2-wheel drive, but it can be had with a 5-speed manual gearbox or a 6-speed automatic box. The diesel will be available with 2-wheel drive with a 6-speed manual and a 6-speed automatic. It will also be offered with 4-wheel drive with a 6-speed manual and 6-speed automatic. Despite a few minor shortcomings, the second generation Fortuner looks set to strengthen its foothold in the Indian subcontinent.